Parents are beyond frustrated, especially with young children in the classroom. We should trust the parents, their medical providers, with the health of our children at this point in the pandemic.
Governor Kemp announces the Unmasked Georgia Students Act that would allow parents to opt out of school district mask mandates without retribution. Good evening and welcome to Lawmakers on this day 16 of the 2020 legislative session. I'm Donna Lowry. More on how the governor's bill would affect local school districts in a moment. Also, during the pandemic, when people needed food, Georgia farmers had produce but needed to get it out of their fields. Many did so through churches, community groups, food banks, and more. Now there's a bipartisan bill to help better connect farmers with food banks to help reduce food insecurity. We'll hear from lawmakers from both sides of the aisle. We'll also learn about a fee that families of students attending University of Georgia colleges have paid since the Great Recession in 2009. Now, there's a move to get rid of it. We'll talk to one of the lawmakers behind the effort to do away with the Georgia Special Institutional Fee. But first, we go to the Gold Dome, where Brenda Waters is ready with an update on the news of the day in the General Assembly. Brenda.
Hey, Donna, busy day under the Gold Dome. Both the governor and the Secretary of State held press conferences this morning. Once again, the governor is urging legislators to ban mask mandates in schools, adding it is time that parents decide whether or not to send their children to school wearing a mask.
This isn't saying that parents can't make the decision to mask their kids. It's just giving parents an opt-out for those children that have parents or the kids themselves that are tired of wearing a mask, that are tired of, really the hypocrisy that we're seeing in schools across the state.
Cobb County maps prompted much debate on the House floor today. House Bill 1154 would draw new district lines for the Cobb County Board of Commissioners. Cobb County maps prompted much debate on the House floor today. House Bill 1154 would draw new district lines for the Cobb County Board of Commissioners. It was presented by Representative John Carson.
These are fair maps. Number one, these are areas, they're drawn with communities of interest in mind, and they reflect the political composition of Cobb County.
That this bill had a thorough vetting in our subcommittee, and it was again heard and then passed in the full committee. I will tell you our committee follows decorum.
But others urged their counterparts to vote no.
No, I know I'm going to get accused of playing the race card, but let me be clear. I am only playing the hand I was dealt. I'm going to be honest with you. This sucks, and I apologize for that. But
HB 1154 passed 95-64 and was immediately transmitted to the Senate. Another bill in the House, HB 1028, presented by Representative Jenny Earhart. It would draw new district lines for Cobb County Board of Education.
The map achieves the goals of those who drew and support it, which is, number one, local control. Number two, legal compliance. 3, equal representation. And 4, the stability of the school district as a whole and the 7 individual posts that make it up.
This bill passed 94-59 and also heads to the Senate. House Bill 841 finished its final passage today. The measure now goes to the governor and then on to a referendum for voters to decide if they want cityhood for East Cobb. Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger says the upcoming election is going to be a high-profile, hard-fought campaign, and with more than 2,000 polling precincts in the state, he believes more law enforcement is needed at polling stations to protect workers, voters, and poll monitors. He is also proposing funding for 2 election investigative positions at GBI.
I am calling on the General Assembly, the governor, and the State Election Board to authorize Georgia State Patrol to provide security for voters, poll workers, and credentialed poll watchers at every voting location, including early voting locations, election day polling places, and county offices where absentee voters' votes and ballots are handled.
Today in the Senate, Senate Bill 316, a cyberbullying and bullying measure passed and immediately transferred to the House. According to Senator Jason Anavitarte, more than 59% of teens have been stalked or bullied. His bill would ensure that every school district has a policy in place to prevent this kind of behavior.
This bill provides that a person 18 years or older who commits offense of stalking against a minor is guilty of a high and aggravated misdemeanor, fine not less than $1,000, no more than $5,000, or to be imprisoned not for 12 months, and requires local school districts to notify parents that when an issue happens.
And this bill will go from, instead of it being a misdemeanor, it's already illegal to stalk somebody. Let's be clear about this. We're not making it illegal. It's already illegal. So this bill would take an 18-year-old kid and say, we're going to charge you with a high and aggravated misdemeanor, which comes with these high fines and or imprisonment. But if you're really concerned about making sure we don't lock up children for misbehavior that could be charged as a misdemeanor and handled more gently and more correctly, then I encourage you to vote no on this bill.
That's my Capitol Report tonight. Donna, back to you.
Thank you so much, Brenda. We're going to talk now about a change to Georgia SNAP, the Georgia State Nutrition Assistance Program, not to be confused with the federal program, also called SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. A Senate committee has looked at not only changing the name of Georgia SNAP, but increasing the partnership with Georgia's food banks. Senator Russ Goodman of Homerville in South Georgia sponsors a bill to make the changes. And I spoke to Goodman, who is a blueberry farmer, earlier today about that legislation.
This bill is the Georgia Grown Farmer to Food Bank program. What it does, and I served on a committee with Senator Harrell Jones, with Senator Freddie Powell Sims, Senator Billy Hickman, and it was a Food Insecurity Study Committee. And we had meetings in Augusta and Valdosta, Atlanta, and we met with folks from all over the state that are dealing with people that are suffering from food insecurity, people that are trying to address the issue, just all kind of concerned parties. And it is an issue. Food insecurity is an issue across the state of Georgia. It's an issue across the country. And being a farmer, I can't help but have a heart for that, because there's so much that we grow that we don't end up selling. And I really appreciate the governor's leadership on this bill. What it's going to do, and it's going to be administered through the Georgia Department of Agriculture, and they're going to work with our food banks across the state. And they're going to be able to go to farmers. It's exclusively for Georgia farmers to buy either surplus, or perhaps, to put it in perspective, so I'm a blueberry farmer, right? Well, let's just say we get a little bit of rain. And a lot of people don't realize just how perfect produce has to be sometimes to make it to the retail level. So if we get a little bit of rain, and if there's a pint clamshell of blueberries, you're going to average somewhere around 300 blueberries in a pint clamshell, right? Well, if you've got a split blueberry, which there's nothing wrong with, it's just got a little split in it because you've had a little bit of rain, that's considered to be a major defect. And so if you have 2 splits, it will pass. If you have 3 splits, then that's considered to be 3 major defects, and it won't pass. And so this is going to allow, especially for some produce like that. My mom loves it. She carries it all over South Georgia and delivers it to everyone, and it's going to create a home for that. It's going to, enable that food that there's really nothing wrong with. It's just not perfect. It's bruised a little bit. But the nutritional value and everything of it's the same. The health benefits and everything are there. It's going to create a home for some of that fruit, but also for surplus. And another added point of this bill that really makes it great is the money that the state is putting into the bill goes into the ratio of the TFAP funding for our food banks. And so it's also going to create, it's going to increase the amount of money that our food banks get from the federal government. So it's a good bill for rural Georgia. It's a good bill for our farmers, and most importantly, it's a good bill for our fellow Georgians across the state that are facing food insecurity. I'm really excited about it. Farmers across Georgia and really across the country have had a tough time as of late. When you look at the farmer's share of the retail dollar, what it was in 1980 and what it is today. In 1980, the farmer's share of the retail dollar was about 30 cents, and today it's 14.5 cents. If you look at the American rancher in 1980, their share of the consumer dollar that was spent on beef in the United States was about 50 cents, and today it's 24.5 cents. And so, you know, it's vitally important. I think a lot of times people don't realize just how important food security is in terms of being an element in national security, right? Do you remember during the height of the pandemic when they were airlifting food into Great Britain? I would hate for us to ever get to be where we can't feed ourselves. And so, you know, this bill is going to be good legislation for rural Georgia. And a lot of people don't realize this, but there's about 1,100 pounds on a pallet of blueberries. So you've got 144 boxes on that pallet, and there's 12 clamshells in every box.
And the clamshells is the packaging.
That's the little plastic, yes, ma'am. And so when we go into quality control, our graders, they will pull 3 clamshells. They'll pull one at the bottom, one in the middle, and one at the top. And you know, if you just happen to get the wrong clamshell, you can get rejected. But this is going to enable farmers to, you know, to be able to continue harvesting, because, you know, the cost of the picking, packing, all of the costs associated with getting it into that clamshell and in that box are so great that, you know, this program is going to help that farmer overcome some of that as well, you know.
I'm glad you talked about what it costs for farmers, what farmers get out of it, because right now with inflation, a lot of people are just shaking their heads when they go to the grocery store, when they go to the farmer's market, about the costs.
It is. Inflation's bad, and I can tell you on the farm level, our inputs are up 50% year over year. The boxes and the clamshells that we put our blueberries in, the cost is up 29% year over year. And really, that's one of the things that I talk a lot about everywhere I go. And I've always been very passionate about the American farmer. That's what we've done all of our lives. And of course, I came of age in the 1980s. You know, from 1980 until 1990, 1/3 of the family farms in this country were foreclosed on. And I lived through those times. And I joke with people a lot of times, during those days, all the kids living on farms, you know, drove 20-year-old pickup trucks, and the kids in town had IROC Z's, you know. But it's tough with what's going on with agriculture right now. And part of it is every industry that the farmer buys from and every industry that the farmer sells to is consolidated. And so that becomes an issue of competition in the marketplace. And also, to be honest, we have to compete with countries that aren't under the same set of standards that we are. And I think that's something that's probably gives me the greatest frustration, really, is, you know, if we as Americans, we as the American government, if we expect our farmers to grow things under certain labor regulations, environmental regulations, emission standards, but yet we're going to make those farmers compete with countries that don't grow under the same set of standards. It's not fair, for one. It's not going to be good long term for our food security, and it's not going to be good for the American farmer or rural communities and all the small businesses across rural America that are dependent upon those family farms.
Senator Russ Goodman, who is a 7th-generation farmer. Joining me now is one of the 50 sponsors of the bill he talked about, Senator Harrell Jones, the 2nd of Augusta, and thank you for coming on the show. You are on the committee that looked into all of this. Tell us a little bit about what that was about and what you learned while you were in that committee.
Well, one of the things we wanted to do is make sure that we increase the access for farmers to be able to sell their products. And one of the things that Senator Goodman was talking about is that you can have mislabeled products, or maybe you could have something that's effective and it can't be sold. So what we tried to do is actually to have an opportunity for that to be sold to food banks, and that's going to be very important as far as food insecurity is concerned.
Yeah, so you can have a misshaped blueberry. Right. Or something like that, and they just can't sell it at all.
That's correct. And so, of course, what you want to do is actually go to food banks, persons who actually are in need. So we had 2 things that we were looking at. Number 1 was how to increase Georgia farmers, but also how to address the problem of food insecurity. And we're able to do that with this particular bill. So it really is one of those real true bipartisan type bills.
Yeah, and so food insecurity in this state is, certainly since the pandemic, has been worse than we've ever seen it before in our lifetime. So this is a way of taking care of that. So how does it work? So there'll be You explain it.
Right. So actually, it's kind of like we have this in place. So what this bill does is a couple of things. We've already had in place to where we had what was called, we wanted to be based on Georgia products. So the Agriculture Commodities Commission said years ago that what we want food banks to do is buy products that are based on Georgia products. But what does that really mean? So what we said was, you know what, let's just say it's got to be grown Georgia. So therefore, when you start talking about whether it's packaged, whether it's storage, whether it's purchased, it's going to be getting that grant money for something that's grown from Georgia. And that's going to be important. And so, yes, as he was talking about, if you have damaged blueberries, for instance, or if you have something that's mislabeled, sometimes even when you start talking about sell dates, a lot of times that does not have anything to do with the safety of the food. Persons don't realize that either. And so you have a lot of food waste that takes place. And what we're trying to do is eliminate that food waste problem and actually try to impact food insecurity.
It sounded like you learned a lot while you were doing this.
I absolutely did, without a doubt. So you found a person from Augusta, Georgia, and also a blueberry farmer able to come together on an issue that's so important to Georgians.
And when it comes to food insecurity, the number of people who are affected by that has grown too, hasn't it? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, one of the things we found is that it contributes to diseases and it affects everyone. We had persons who actually came to testify from the Atlanta area. We had persons from Valdosta and also Augusta. It's something that crosses not only party lines, but racial lines, class lines. It is a serious problem, not only in Georgia, but nationwide. And now Georgia's starting to really attack the problem and help our farmers.
And the other part about it is you talked about a blueberry farmer and then you from Augusta, but they're inside the cities. We have these food deserts where it is really difficult to get fresh produce, right?
That's exactly right. So one of the things we want to do is start trying to find out ways to actually increase the ability to get produce. And so this is just one step. I think you're going to see other legislation that's going to come about because we want to attack that food insecurity problem and make persons food security.
Yeah, and so calling it Georgia grown, you think makes a difference in terms of rather than calling it the State Nutritional Assistance Program?
Right, I think it really kind of tells us exactly what we're trying to do, and it kind of puts a face on it that this is for Georgians, and we're really attacking this problem in a positive way. Let's don't look at it from like food deserts or something of that nature. Let's talk about how we can get people to have food security.
I'm curious whether you went out to some farms while you were on this committee.
I didn't get the opportunity to
You
go
didn't
out
get a chance
farms,
to do that.
But we heard from plenty of farmers, and we heard from other persons that have issues here.
And the other part of this is this really will help the farmers. When their food is rejected, it just doesn't go anywhere, right? It's a loss to everybody.
And that's something I did not know and others didn't know either. So yes, not only will it benefit them, it's going to benefit those persons who have insecure food problems.
Yeah, and it's a problem that you guys are solving, and it's bipartisan. He has 50 sponsors on that.
That's
so
correct.
50 signers, and you're one of them.
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting for you. Because we usually talk to you about judicial issues.
That's correct.
And you're going to stick around. We're going to talk about some other issues, too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, coming up next, if you're a parent of a student in a Georgia public college, you've likely wondered about all those fees that you have to pay on top of tuition. We'll talk about efforts to get rid of one of those fees coming up. You're watching Lawmakers on GPB.
Cigna is a proud partner of Georgia Public Broadcasting and Georgia Lawmakers. Cigna's mission is to improve the health, well-being, and peace of mind of those we serve. More at Cigna.com to learn how you can help support your employees' physical and emotional well-being.
Lawmakers is made possible by Georgia Farm Bureau. With over 80 years of helping everyone understand the importance of agriculture in our state. After all, ag is Georgia's #1 industry. Food and fiber production represents over $74 billion in output of Georgia's strong economy. The Georgia Farm Bureau legislative team works to represent producers across Georgia at the state capitol during the session and year-round. Georgia Farm Bureau, the voice of Georgia farmers.
Georgia Humanities, connecting people and communities across Georgia to encourage conversation, education, and understanding. Find out more at www.georgiahumanities.org.
We are the Southern Environmental Law Center. At SELC, we not only take on the toughest environmental challenges, we win, forcing the removal of more than 250 million tons of toxic coal ash, defeating repeated attempts to bring offshore drilling to our coasts, and securing clean air and water protections for communities across our region. Your most powerful environmental defender is rooted right here in the South.
Welcome back to Lawmakers. Joining us once again is Senator Harrell Jones II of Augusta. Thank you for staying. We reached out to several lawmakers to come on the show tonight, but many had Valentine's Day plans. Imagine that. One person first agreed to come on, and a few seconds later remembered he had dinner plans with his wife and said, no, I can't do that. One lawmaker who graciously did agree to come on, despite Valentine's Day plans, is Senator Sally Harrell of Atlanta. Thanks so much for coming on. You're going to have plans afterwards, right?
Yes,
okay.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Senator Harrell, we're going to start by talking with you about a bill that a lot of parents with students in University of System of Georgia colleges will understand, and that's those fees. I'm one of those parents, in particular, the Georgia Special Institutional Fee. Now, let's explain it a little bit. It's a fee created in 2009 and established to cover the $1.4 million in state budget cuts. It was instituted to cover the loss of faculty and staff positions, the cessation of some of the course offerings, an increase in class sizes, and the deferral of maintenance and buildings infrastructure projects all on the campuses. And Senator Harrell, that's a bit of the background, but tell us more about what happened back there in 2009 that we got this fee.
Right. Well, my initiative in this area actually started with a concern for part-time students because I attended a presentation of Georgia Gwinnett College in my district and found out that those students oftentimes take 8 years to complete a degree. But if they take just two classes, they pay 100% of the fees. So you can do the math and figure that by the time they finish that degree, they're probably paying about $10,000 more for their degree than someone who can afford to go full-time. These are kids who are working their way through school. So I wrote a bill addressing that and brought it to the Senate Higher Education Committee, and we had quite a lengthy discussion about it, and the University System of Georgia was really concerned that they would lose a lot of money, and they've had significant budget cuts through the years. We used to pay to subsidize public education at about 75% of the cost, and that has dropped down to about 40%. So that extra money is coming out of students' pockets. So we realized that the issue was quite complex, and there are lots of different kinds of fees, as you've noted on the bills. There's fees for everything, right?
Right. Academics, for lab fees. There's a lot of stuff that, when you dig through it, you think, why do I have all of these fees?
That's right.
For sports, for, of course, athletics and all of that. But this institutional fee, right, I know people were really concerned about. What exactly is
Okay,
that?
so what we did is we initiated a study committee to work on this issue in the interim because it is pretty complex. And during the course of that study committee, we discovered this fee called a special institutional fee. And we asked the same question, what is this? Because it was so big. I mean, it was making up on average about 40% of the total fees. It was the biggest fee in the set. So we were like, what is this? And that's when we found out that it was a fee that was instituted right after this recession to make up for lost state revenue, but it was supposed to be temporary. And here we are in 2022, and it was still there. So we started asking the hard questions, and in the final recommendation of our committee, we made the recommendation that it be removed. But the Board of Regents said, well, then that's going to cut $230 million from our budget. And so if we removed the fee and you had to increase tuition to cover it, that would be great for all the kids who have hope. But for the kids who don't have the Hope Scholarship, that money would be coming out of their pockets again. So we also recommended that we make up the lost revenue by funding that funding formula.
And the governor has agreed to this.
And we were quite shocked and quite surprised when the governor revealed his budget that he recommended getting rid of not only getting rid of the special institutional fee, but also funding the formula for an additional $230 million to make up the difference.
It's called the teacher's formula?
It's called the teacher's formula. It works kind of like the QBE formula for K-12, except it's not as prescriptive, but it is the way that states put money into the university system so that they can make it cost less for families. That's why public education costs less than private education.
And one last thing, you said for some colleges like Georgia Tech, it can be $500 and something of this.
Yeah, I actually have a kid at Georgia Tech, so I know exactly how much it is. It's $544, and that's not for the year, that's per semester. So it's twice that for the year.
So thanks to all of this work, that could go away. So that sounds really good.
That's right.
I want to talk to you about something else in a moment, but I want to get to Senator Jones a little bit. You have gone to the floor of the Senate quite a bit talking about the new maps, and which you feel there wasn't enough vetting on the maps. Talk about that a little bit.
That's correct. So we've heard the good about farmers and also about the institutional fee. We're going to the bad and the ugly right now, and that's these maps, the local maps. And they're not going through the proper vetting process. And what's happened is, in a lot of local communities, or some local communities, they've gone through the process. They've gone through committees, they've been passed by commissions, they've been passed by Board of Education. But when they come up here to the Capitol, unilaterally, senators or House members are just changing those maps. And that's not right. It's not part of the democratic process, and we shouldn't be behaving in this way. But we're actually going fast forward and doing that, and it's very unfortunate.
Yeah, so you've talked about it, but it's kind of moving along. It's like one of those trains that you can't stop, right?
It is one of those trains, but we're hoping possibly be able to stop it in court.
And you keep talking about it, so we'll keep telling
exactly
people
right.
about it.
Thank you.
All right, and Senator Harrell, I do want to talk about another bill you have. It deals with people who have developmental disabilities, or related diagnoses. First, here's some background on who we're talking about. In 2017, the Residential Information System Project reported that 2.3% of the overall state population, or more than 241,000 Georgians, are living with a developmental disability-related diagnosis. Of that group, only 7.2%, or more than 17,000, are not served by a state agency. And tell us how Medicaid fits into the state help that they might get.
Right. So there was a court case way back in 1999. It's called the Olmstead Decision. And that said that if a person had to live in an institution, that we were in violation of the ADA, the American Disabilities Act. And so at that point, we started moving people out of institutions. But you have to give them, if you're going to move them out, you need to give them some sort of support in the community. And so those are Medicaid waivers. They're called NOW, stands for New Option Waiver, and COMP, which stands for Comprehensive. And this is support money for these people to help them live in their communities where, you know, they can be happy and much happier than they are if they're in an institution.
And they're at a certain age. They've aged out
of the school system.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. That's right.
And so you want them to live on their own. And right now, you mentioned there are so many on a waiting list.
That's right. So this waiting list has been around since 1999. When I served in the House, the waiting list was new, and I helped advocate for these people living with disabilities to get these services. I left politics for 15 years, and when I came back, I found out the waiting list was still there, which was very disappointing. So I decided to take up the fight again, and I authored a bill, Senate Bill 208, which proposes that we fund these slots, and over the course of 5 years, we eliminate that waiting list, which means we're going to have to fund a lot more slots than we have been funding.
Yeah, so you said you've been doing this for a long time, and a lot of people don't understand the whole Medicaid process. In Georgia, Medicaid is not fully funded, and that's part of the problem. If we were fully funded, that would
this is a
funded?
different Medicaid waiver than the like health insurance Medicaid waiver.
Okay.
But it does for every Medicaid, for every NOW or comp waiver that we put state money into, it does draw down federal dollars to the tune of 60 or 70% of the cost.
Yeah. So Senate Bill 208 required the Department of Behavioral Health and Development of Disabilities to just fully fund it over this 5-year period.
Yes, we're calling it fully fund in 5.
Yeah. How are you feeling about it at this point?
Well, what we have discovered, you know, issues are always more complex than you think they are in the beginning. And what we've discovered is that we need to build some infrastructure. We need to pay the providers who help help take care of these people. We need to pay them more so they'll want to do those jobs instead of going to higher paying paying jobs even at Walmart. And we need to build the homes and the infrastructure. And so we have some more to do.
We'll have you back on. We're running out of time, but we want to thank you for coming on, both of you, and thank you for joining us tonight for Lawmakers. We will see you again tomorrow for Legislative Day 17. Bye-bye.